Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to my post-mortem video on Ink, my submission to Ludum Dare 32. Ludum Dare is a game programming competition. It comes in two variants. There's a 72-hour jam where you can work as a group and use some pre-existing assets, but I'm participating in the 48-hour compo, which is a solo endeavor. You have to work on your own, and you can't use any existing art assets of any kind. At 9 p.m. on Friday, the theme was announced, which was an unconventional weapon, which means I had until 9 p.m. on Sunday to finish the game. My interpretation of the theme was to play on ink. Basically, your main character is in a literary land, for alliterations. The procedurally generated quote-unquote dungeon that you're in is formed from paper and books, and he fights with a fountain pen using ink as a resource. Now, as always, time is the main limiter in this kind of game. I actually had a lot of really great, I'm convinced, very great, strong ideas that would have made for really fun gameplay and really emphasized the theme a lot of both the ink and using it in sort of an unconventional way. But because of time limitations, ultimately the combat had to be relatively simple in the end. Basically, you do still you can shoot a beam of ink basically out of your pen and use that to fight enemies. And if you do run out of ink, you can just turn to stabbing people with the pen itself if need be. Enemies pop out of books. The idea is that sort of theme where everything is from a book, and when you kill an enemy, it disintegrates into letters that tumble onto the ground. And it's a little hard to tell if you're just playing, but the letters actually always spell out the name of the enemy. So if you kill a ninja, then it'll drop the letters N-I-N-J-A. Originally, the first idea with the game was that you would collect these letters and then use the letters to craft weapons, basically by spelling them out. So if you could spell out sword, then it would create a sword that might literally be made out of letters, which would be cool. But if you could spell out something like flaming sword, then it would do additional fire damage. And I still think that's an excellent mechanic that I would love to see, but none of that made it into the game, except for the fact that the enemies do drop letters. The letters get added to your ink supply, and as is the ink supply, and I'll show you some gameplay momentarily here. The ink supply, actually, I guess I could load it up very quickly here. Let me just hit play. And you can see in the bottom left corner, we've got our pen here. This pen serves as both your health and also your ink supply. When you take damage, your health will drop, and the pen will actually turn from colored into sort of black and white mode to symbolize that. And then you have your ink supply in the middle here. And so we can shoot a spray of ink. You can see it even colors the walls over here. We can shoot this spray of ink, and then the supply will go down. When you kill the enemies, they drop in a shower of letters. When you pick up the letters, it will first heal you. It will bring your hit points up. If your hit points are at 100%, however, then it will fill up your ink supply there. And again, you can stab people with your pen. It's actually pretty good because it actually does like an area of effect damage. You can hit multiple enemies at once as you sort of cleave through them. But ultimately, you want to fight from range as much as possible. So here's the world here. The walls, again, are made out of books. The ground is paper. Your character leaves little ink stains behind as he walks around. And I think is ultimately very cool. I'll show you the combat in a little bit. All right, so that was my interpretation. Again, oh, the other thing, right. So even after I got rid of the idea, I realized that the crafting weapons wouldn't work. We actually have a neat effect that if I pause here and then find my player, I could show you something. The other thing I wanted to do, but we didn't make it in here. I have these ink splots, and if I grab this one called Fire Trap, which is a test, put it in like that, and then we go back into the game and unpause it here. This sort of mechanic where you could write on the ground was another idea, using some of your ink, write down the word fire trap. I mean, I wasn't going to make you literally write anything with the pen because it would have been too tricky, both for the gameplay and also for the game to interpret what the symbols were supposed to be. But, there'd be some button or something that would use some of your ink mana to put down a fire trap on the ground that people would walk over, or the level could have been generated itself with some fire traps that you had to, avoid and be careful. And I think the effect is just wonderful, especially with this font here. I think it just looks gorgeous on the ground, but it didn't make it into the gameplay, which is very sad. Time limitations. And speaking of time, let's go look at some of that breakdown over here. Oh, first, the tools that I used. On the visual side, I used Unity 5 as the engine. Substance Designer is the system that I used to make all my materials and textures and things like that. It's a procedural material generation system, which is quite fun to work with. I used Blender for my 3D. Technically, this is Blender, I think. 2.71 is what I used, and I think I have Substance Designer 4 point something. I think it's 4.5 or something like that, and Photoshop whatever version this is. It doesn't particularly matter. How do I get the welcome system info? Whatever. I got some version of Photoshop. Doesn't matter. And then on the audio side, I used Audacity. Some of the sound effects in the game are just made with my voice and the microphone. Used autotool.com to make very, very, very basic music. Autotool.com is great, though, for making like really cool electronica. I used it for my Ludum Dare 31 entry and actually made like a song that lasts, I don't know, a minute and a half. This, I just made a simple 4-bar loop background music, and then we used BFXR for some basic blips and bloops and that sort of thing. And I say we from time to time because even though I worked solo, I had thousands of people watching me on the live stream, keeping me motivated and spitting out neat ideas that almost none of them I had time to implement, but I really wanted to because people came up with great ideas, and so there you go. It's a shame. Time calculation. All right. I know because I recorded my stream that I streamed for 39 hours in total this weekend. Now, some of that was before and after the competition. I did an hour of pre-stream, and I did just over 2 hours after the submission time. Essentia came down. Essentia, my wife / chief moderator, came down, and we hung out on camera. So at least another 2 hours there for a total of about 3. I estimate my break time was probably somewhere around 5 hours in total. Try to take a walk every other hour or so, plus, food breaks and poo breaks and that sort of thing. Probably about 5 hours, which means I figure I probably spent about 30 hours in total working on the game. The time breakdown for that, these are approximations, sort of ballpark. I think I spent maybe a little less time on the menus in game UI, for example, and probably a little bit more time on the character logic because there were a few iterations of this, but it's hard to account for everything. Most likely the biggest chunk of it was the map generation / art. Most of the Friday night from the theme announcement at 9 till about, 4 o'clock in the morning was almost all spent on just the map generation, and then more of that going forward as well, especially redoing the walls and getting happy with the textures and the models there. The character logic for both the AI opponents and the player itself probably was the next biggest chunk of time, followed by character art and animation, which is my weakest. Turns out I'm apparently not terrible at drawing or arting inorganic things, right? Like just everyday objects, and I can apparently do a half-decent job of throwing them together in Blender and also texturing them to a certain extent. But actual character art is very difficult for me, and it also represents something that I think just takes a lot more time. Right, to make someone who looks convincingly human, it takes a lot of time to get the nose just right, get the slope of the shoulders just right, and then to animate that. I quite like the main character. Again, if we pop back over here, I'm actually very happy with Inkwell McWordsworth over here. I like this sort of stylized, cartoony look. The feet just sort of floating there. The top hat, I was trying to go with like the top of an Inkwell bottle, an ink bottle with like a cork in it. You got the pen over there. And, he's got a little suit, a little bow tie, and I think he's great. Obviously very simple, but I'm very happy with the look of him. Whereas the enemies, I'm mostly not happy with the look of them, and it was just, I had to rush really, really fast to get it done. But there'll be more of that later on. Time spent on visual effects, particles, and projectors. I actually probably spent a little bit more time on that than is listed here. And that includes things like projectors include the footprints and also the ability to spray and hit the wall and do that. And also when you kill an enemy, they leave an ink stain on the ground. And quite short duration. It used to be longer and it looked better when it was longer, but all these projectors are actually apparently really, really CPU and GPU intensive, so I had to sort of trim down their effect a little bit. One of the things I would like to spend like a whole day on in this game is just optimizing different things to improve the speed overall so that the effects can stick around. Anyway, in-game UI, sound, that sort of thing. So what went really, really well? The map generation. Overall, I'd done a practice of this before Ludum Dare. I didn't do quite as good of a job as I did for the one that's in Ludum Dare. This map generation system does really good sort of roguelike / Diablo-like maps, and it's tunable in a variety of different ways. You can change how many rooms get generated. I think the version that I use in the game. I think I set it to generate 20 rooms, and again, in the version of the game, the rooms are relatively small compared to the hallways and relatively spread out, so you end up with these long hallways, but you can easily change it around so that the rooms are a bit bigger and don't start off as spread out, and you get very few hallways. Instead, you get a lot of rooms that are just adjacent to each other, and you can walk through a doorway from one room directly into another room, which is great depending on what you're going for. I was quite happy with this layout. I think it had a good feel for this kind of game, but it was very tunable. It uses graph theory and things to make really, really good maps, and I'm super, super happy with how this worked out. I'm also really happy with the environment details. As I mentioned, I like the using books for walls. The sort of paper floor worked out pretty well. The ink stains, is when I go back into the game and we show some of that off, look really good. Look better when we had a longer duration. It was fine. When you kill an enemy, they explode in a shower of letters. I think those are very cool as well. And the real star, though, is enemies spawn from these books that are lying on the ground. As you approach them, the books open up and then the monsters sort of pop out of there. This is gorgeous. I'm so incredibly happy with the look of this and also the animation of the book happening. What went wrong? Well, lots of things, and almost all of it comes down to just, time is incredibly tight. 30 hours is simply very, very little time. If I had spent half as much time on the map generation and the environmental art, then a lot of the things that I'm about to say went wrong would have disappeared. Maybe there would be something to be said about that. I'm not sure if I could have made the maps faster and still been happy with them. It took a lot of iterations for the walls and everything. I mean, the map looks. I'm super happy with the environment, but I can't art organic objects. In general, I don't do a very good job of that. But more importantly, not with the minimal amount of time available. I can't take 30 minutes and whip together something that looks like a convincing ninja. Give me 4 hours or maybe a full day, and even I, with my limited art skills, could probably make a cool sort of cartoony ninja. But I can't spend a day to make a proper ninja model. So that's tough. If the game were 2D, I could do things a little faster. But there's some things that I do much worse in 2D than 3D. Again, the environment wouldn't have looked as good with my limited 2D art skills, but I probably could have made a slightly better, 16-bit ninja. But what I should have done is focused on enemies that were inorganic, such as typewriters and whiteout bottles. And I'd really actually hope there's a pirate in the game who's like the shittiest model in the whole game. And I'd really wanted to make another pass at him where the cannon that he uses was actually whiteout bottle. And just doing that by itself would have been better. But honestly, just having like whiteout bottles as enemies that shoot out goops of whiteout would have been good. Typewriters could spit out keys at you. And I think I could have done... I could have been really fast making these, and I think I would have made something that looks a lot better as well. There's not a ton of enemy variety. I really wanted quite a bit more of it, but again, it was the amount of time it takes to art a new enemy. If I could have stolen time from somewhere else or acted faster if I was working on inorganic enemies, then we may have been able to stick a few more in. But I'm disappointed by the lack of enemies. That being said, I will point out one thing that I forgot to mention at the start. My priority with Ludum Dare games is always, first of all, they have to be fun. That's top priority. Secondly, I want them to be completable in 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most. I want them to be relatively easy. I don't want the game to defeat you because I want people to actually see the game. I want people to experience the game, which is why short and all that. So you don't need a ton of variety for that sort of thing. And so yes, so fun and short gameplay, sort of overall quality is important. One of the things I'm not particularly interested in is necessarily making something that's intentionally avant-garde or innovative necessarily. I want a fun game that is easily to play. This game here is not terribly innovative or novel, but I think it's relatively fun. I think it generally looks good, but the lack of enemy variety, that bothers me. And more importantly, I'm really sad I didn't have time to implement a proper endgame. Originally, the goal of the game is to pick up these 3 pieces of inspiration so you can finish your book before your editor gets mad. But originally, I wanted the 3 pieces of information to actually summon the editor, or rather, summon you to him. So it would teleport you to a room apart from the dungeon. You have to fight the editor, who, while you have your beam of ink, he would use like a highlighter beam and, I don't know, some other set of attacks. I wanted to have a few different attacks, but I would have had to implement like a system where the enemies had multiple different attacks, which currently they do not, just art a few more things, and just didn't have enough time for that, which makes me sad. And speaking of the inspiration, if I'd had my wife try the game before the deadline, I would have realized a mistake I'd made. Right now, you pick up your inspiration simply by running over it. Like, you just touch it and it picks it up automatically. But as it turns out, it's quite easy for you to be standing where the inspiration spawns and not really notice that you've picked it up, and not really recognize what's going on. I should have made it sort of a click to collect thing so that it was very explicit that you're doing something important there. If I'd worked on the victory conditions sooner, because I sort of saved it until the last minute, then I probably would have spotted those as well. Normally, I like to have all the game features, including the sort of victory and loss conditions, done on Saturday and leave Sunday open entirely for polish. But it ended up, I kept pushing back the victory stuff more and more and more because I was still hoping to do this boss thing. And so it got pushed back to Sunday, which meant I didn't have as much time to sort of iterate over it, which is too bad. And we failed to have enough time to implement more cool ink-based abilities, as I mentioned at the beginning. The ability to originally use the letters to create weapons, but even barring that, the ability to put writing on the floor and really emphasize the theme quite a bit. So it made me sad that we didn't have that. All right. Let's do a little bit of gameplay. Now, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to mute the computer sounds. And the reason for that is one of the game effects, the picking up of letters that happen after you kill an enemy, the audio source on it is actually set to be very, very low volume. But in the end, I ended up playing the sound through a different function that ignores the volume on the audio source, which means it's overly loud. So these blip, 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 when you pick up the letters is far too loud, far louder than it should be. There's quiet music in the game. If you play it yourself, you'll be able to hear some music and a variety of different sound effects. But for this, I think it'll be better if I just keep the, you'll hear some of it through the microphone, but other than that, it's muted. So yeah, so here's the environment. You can see the mini-map over there. The books come in they have three different varieties. Originally, I wanted to also have, the book walls themselves have different materials. And the system is all set up to support that. If I had a variety of these, then it would have used, with different materials, it would have been totally okay with that. And then within the model itself, within the sort of prefab for a book, this prefab here has three variant objects, like sub-objects within it, and those represent the bookmarks. So there's this hard one like this, there's a floppy cloth one like that, and another floppy cloth one that extends onto the floor, and I think is one of my favorite effects into the game overall. So we're going to enter our first room. We've got these bat books, these book bats over here that flap at you and try to hit you, and you can see my hit points down here, so taking a little bit of damage. We'll kill it. One of the things I think I mentioned earlier is when you kill something, it explodes in letters that spell it out. So I already picked up the B, but the A and the T is still there. So it's not necessarily visible, but it's sort of a nice touch if you realize that it's going on. Also, when I kill something, watch the ink stain on the ground. Again, I kind of wish the duration was longer, but I kept having to nerf the duration of some of those effects just because it was too hard on the computer. So I know that this red book over here controls ninjas. Or Kane's ninjas. It also, if you could get close enough, the label on it actually says something like Japanese culture, myths of the ninja, or something like that on there. But watch the book opening effect. It's one of my favorite things in the entire game. It's actually one of my favorite things I've ever done in any game. So the ninjas have two varieties. They have the melee ninjas, which can occasionally teleport at you and just try to punch you. And then there's ones that throw throwing stars at you, but the throwing stars are actually asterisks. See here, they do randomize their cooldown a little, so they shouldn't always throw it in sync, but I probably could have put a little bit more variation in there just to split up the attacks just a little bit. The ninja model is relatively simple, and I kept wanting to come back and give them like a red scarf or something like that to make them a little bit less boring, but what can you do? Okay, so I'm going to go up, I'm going to run up and melee it with the pen here, which will, because it does some splash damage, it should kill all of them in one hit, and just watch the ink stains on the ground. There we go. Like that. And it fades pretty quick, but I think, and again, if I hadn't faded it away, if I didn't have to do that, it would have been wonderful. I do have a pooling system in the game for a few different things, but the one thing the pooling system doesn't do is keep a maximum cap of instances. So when something gets disabled, it does go back in the pool and then gets reused. But for these splotches, I think a pool of 20 of them or something like that, where if I would have been cool because I could have kept them around forever basically until I needed a new one. So there would have only been a limit of 20 at any given time, but something like that might have been good, but I don't know. What else was going to show off? Oh, the little circle underneath here. If you're holding down the mouse button and you sweep over an enemy, it'll lock on to that enemy, because especially with things that are moving around, and with you moving around, it can be hard to keep focused on there, especially for the melee attack, because you've got to be relatively close and clicking on it to melee it. So what happens is, if you're holding down your mouse and you pass over an enemy, it'll actually lock on to that enemy. If you move your mouse onto another enemy, then it'll switch your focus to that one. But more importantly, if you move your mouse off of the enemy, you will still stay locked on to that original enemy. And it makes it a lot easier to sort of land those blows, and not sort of like, oh, the bat just barely moved out of the mouse, so now you're sort of canceling your movement and your attack, and you're going in a different direction. So it's a nice little quality of life. I could have removed the targeting circle, and I think it would have felt perfectly organic. You wouldn't have realized it was doing this lock on at all. You just would have been like, no, it's relatively easy to target things, and which it should be. This is not like an FPS shooter. The skill component of this game is not, keeping your mouse on a little target. So apparently we're getting another book of ninjas over here. So we'll wipe them out. Use some of the laser beam here. Oh, I'm out of ink. So yeah, there's that running out of ink effect here. So as I pick these up, first my health will replenish. And then when my health is full, which I didn't quite get there, it'll start giving me ink. Originally, these books were called something like devil books or something like that. Their name was longer, so they dropped a lot more letters, and it was much easier to stay healed. Okay, problem number one. You're going to see, first of all, this shitty effect. We're going to have to discuss this. But right there, you saw I accidentally picked up the inspiration. You probably didn't even notice it on the screen, and that's one of the issues. I really wish that you had to click explicitly on the inspiration to pick it up, because this will happen a lot where you don't notice something happening. So that's why I keep trying to move back here. First of all, it's safer if you sort of just get close enough to open the book and then back off. More importantly, it means that you won't accidentally pick up the inspiration and miss the effect. So that I'm sad about. Also, I really wanted, when you picked up the inspiration, for them to be a pop-up and sort of like it's you working on your draft. It's like, oh, it was a dark and stormy night. No, that's terrible. Let's not go with that. And you sort of crumple it up and throw it away. But ran out of time, so like really quickly, like I took like 3 minutes because I wanted an effect. Originally, not originally in sort of any planned way, but you could pick this up and it's like, and that was it. You got a little like sound fanfare and that was it. But I really wanted some sort of visual on the screen letting you know something happened. So very quickly, I threw together this little effect where the inspiration word comes across the screen, so you at least realize something happened, even though it looks like shit. And originally it was supposed to come on right away, but at different resolutions it was sort of visible, and I didn't have time to like work on a system to toggle it active and inactive and whatever. So I'm just like, I moved it further to right to be off screen, because I was throwing this together with like seconds to spare, basically. And because it's so far off screen, it actually takes a while for it to show up. So you pick this up, and then you're going around, and then, some seconds later, this incredibly shitty effect comes across the way. So yeah, that's a thing. So we're going to look for the third one to complete the game. Oh, I didn't actually show death yet, so let's die. I'm going to get out of this neck of the woods and find some more rooms. Wanted more clutter, wanted more variance, where like instead of bookmarks, there was maybe just a stack of books, in front of these, just to add more variety. So here's the pirate. I should show you that. So the pirate Blackbeard is my least favorite model. For a variety of reasons. The model itself is relatively bad, but I also didn't have any time to actually texture it. These are simple, straight up materials over here. And I want to replace his cannon with a bottle of corrective fluid, whiteout, and then shoot blobs of white, which I think would have been very thematic. So this one will kill me. So, and that was the last anyone ever saw of Inkwell McWordsworth. His final words were left unpublished. The end screen is not particularly brilliant, although I do love that phrase quite a bit. I always prioritize, I say it's not a game if you don't have a win condition and a loss condition. So here's our loss condition, but at the same time, it's very important to me that people can finish the game of Ludum Dare relatively easily and quickly. So there's a respawn button here. You can have your epilogue. It just respawns you with full health and ink. So you can come over and kill this Blackbeard if we want, and then keep running around. And yeah, we don't have to kill them all. We just have to, we do have to finish the swarm of bats, though. That's quite a few of them. We just have to find, there we go, the inspiration. I have the map set to generate 20 rooms, and so 20 rooms. The room you start in will have no book spawner at all. We'll have no enemies, but every other room will have a book in it. So technically, this is a room. It's just a very skinny room. We'll have a book in it that will spawn an enemy, and 5 of those books will contain a piece of inspiration. So you don't have to go around and open up every single one. On average, you'll open, maybe you'll have to open a dozen. Sometimes you'll get lucky. It'll be the first 3, but that's pretty unlikely. But it also means you don't have to clear every single room, because 5 of them will have the inspiration. So when I pick this one up, we will win. And again, here, I would have liked it if you picked it up, like explicitly, if there was still a pop-up, and if there was a smooth transition to this screen, but, had to be done. I do like, this whole thing. Even the frayed edge here, it was sort of a result of poor cropping, but it's kind of that raw paper cut look, which isn't bad. That I could probably use a little anti-aliasing, but ultimately I like the look of this quite a bit. I think it works with the theme very strongly. So you click on the end over here, it will exit the game completely. You can also restart it, and both on this page, but also on the main menu, there's the credits link over here, because that's obviously very, very important, and it'll show up in here. But I also want to explicitly thank everyone who came out to watch the live stream. There were thousands of you who came out and watched, and that's the reason I enjoy Ludum Dare Weekend so much. If I didn't live stream the whole thing, I probably would not have participated 11 times like I have done now. It just makes it it's just brilliant. It's fun. It's amazing, and I'm hoping it helps to give more people the interest and passion to go out there and make games themselves. We need more games in this world, so get out and get it done. I think that mostly addresses everything I want to talk about this. You can check the links down below for my Ludum Dare entry page, which will also contain links to the PC, Mac, and Linux download versions. There might also be a web player link on there. And you can also download the entire Unity project yourself. Note that I'll have to make this explicit in the download file, actually, but it's not an open source or public domain thing, but you can download the project and take a look at it if you would like to see exactly how it was put together. I do like these these buttons here. It would have been nice if this was like an actual story text as opposed to lorem ipsum, but I couldn't find a way. I couldn't think of a way to incorporate these phrases into a story text that kind of made any sense whatsoever. But yeah, that's the main menu. A little story, a little introduction, play, kill the bats, go and explore. Thank you very much for watching this. If you're watching this over on youtube.com/Quill18, you might want to check out youtube.com/Quill18creates, which is the channel where I do Unity tutorials, Unity programming tutorials, so you can make your own games. And vice versa, if you're watching this on Quill18 Creates, check out my Quill18 channel, which is where I play video games, new Let's Plays, and all that kind of jazz. And of course, make sure to go over to twitch.tv/Quill18 and hit follow so that you'll get alerts whenever I do some live streaming over there, which is normally every Wednesday and Saturday. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.